Good day, everyone. This is a recorded lesson discussion in reading and writing. So, the topic that I'm going to discuss for this video is about critical reading skills. Okay, lesson objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students will be able to explain critical reading as looking for ways of thinking and as reasoning, identify claims explicitly or implicitly made in a written text, evaluate the validity of arguments in the text, and determine textual evidence to validate assertions and counterclaims made about a text read. Strategies for effective critical reading. So, as a student, it is essential for you to practice reading critically. Critical reading goes beyond extracting information from a text. Rather, it involves recognizing the writer's purpose, identifying the tone and persuasive elements, and recognizing biases. Critical reading provides high reflective skills which allow you to stand back and look at the text from different perspectives. It lends you the ability to see and evaluate how a text presents arguments. Without this skill, a reader may run the risk of simply memorizing texts and accepting them even if they are flawed, biased, and subjective. Okay, aside from employing strategies, you have to read the text within an open mind. From here, you can see how ideas are developed and organized. Remember to think critically all throughout the reading process and ask higher order questions whenever possible. So in order for you to comprehend what the text is trying to convey to you as a reader, you need to be open-minded. You need to be open when it comes to the things that you'll be able to read and understand on the text that the author is saying. So you need to see how the sentences, the contents are being organized, are being developed. So it's because from there you'll be able to understand the implied messages. It's also very important to ask critical questions that will stir a comprehensible discussion. The statements in the text must also be evaluated. Examine the facts and examples. Try to check if there are gaps and inconsistencies. Check for the accuracy and reliability of the sources and distinguish facts from opinions. Aside from evaluating, look for what is not presented as well. Based on all the facts presented, assess if the conclusions are acceptable. So, which means that you need to evaluate, you need to scrutinize, you need to judge whether the text that you are reading is just a form of opinion or facts. So you also need to check if the information or details are accurate or are they reliable. In addition, remember the credibility of the writer. Analyze the motivation for writing the text by looking at the writer's socio-political, cultural, economic, and personal situation. So it's also important to check the background of the author. So you need to make sure that the topic he or she is discussing in the text is something that it is his or her expertise. Okay, hypertext and intertext. When we say intertext, it refers to a work whose meaning is shaped by referencing or calling to mind other texts. Basically, other texts help add meaning to the current text. The reader gets to understand the context of the piece through other texts which parallel in it in terms of plot, characters, premise, and the like. So when we say intertext, you're able to understand the text that you are reading by making references to other texts, other existing body of knowledge or existing literature. So when you read something, you'll be able to understand by comparing it to other works. For example, if you're reading a novel, you may find it similar to other texts. So there's or other novels. There's a possibility that the author of that novel is making an analogy or making an allusion of previous works of other authors. So in order for you to understand, you need to look at other literature. An example of an intertextual work is C.S. Lewis' The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It alludes to the Bible, and some of the parts parallel to some of the scenes in the Bible, such as Edmund's betrayal and Aslan's sacrifice, vis-a-vis Judas' betrayal, and the crucifixion of Jesus. So, in a story in the book of C.S. Lewis, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it has a lot of allusions in the Bible. So, in order for us to understand the meaning of the events in the book of C.S. Lewis, let's look at the references, the allusions he made or he alluded from the Bible. Next is hypertext. It is a work set. Hypertext is characterized by the external links embedded in a text by the writer. In hypertext, the reader can read the text in a nonlinear way because he is led to other links outside the main text. So, yung hypertext, this is usually in um, in digital platform. So we will be able to look at other details or extended information about the topic in the text that you're reading when you click the link. Okay, example this one. Judaism, monotheistic religion developed among the ancient Hebrews. Judaism is characterized by a belief in one transcendent God who revealed himself to Abraham, Moses, and the Hebrew prophets, by a religious life in accordance with scriptures and rabbinic traditions. Judaism is a complex phenomenon of a total way of life for the Jewish people, comprising theology, law, and innumerable cultural traditions. So, as you can see in the screen, there are words highlighted in color blue. So, if you're going to click that one, you'll be directed to another link which presents details and information about the topic that you click. For example, monotheistic religion. If you're going to click this one, you'll be directed to a page wherein it focuses about monotheistic religion. The same thing with this one, the word Hebrews. So if you're going to click that one, you'll be directed to a page which discusses about Hebrews. So that's hypertext. It's a link. Then we also have types of claims. Okay, when reading text critically, it is imperative that you identify the type of claims or the approach to the topic to see the main argument. Although we focus on critical reading, it is useful to note that these claims may also be used when you write your own paper. So it's useful in critical reading and critical writing. Okay, there are three types of claims: claims of fact, claims of value, claims of policy. Each type of claim focuses on a different aspect of a topic. To best participate in an argument, it is beneficial to understand the type of claim that is being argued. Okay, first is claim of fact. A claim of fact asserts that something quantifiable has existed, does exist, or will exist. The center of controversy in a factual claim is over the reasonableness of the fact in question. In other words, a claim of fact debates whether the statement of the claim is correct or incorrect, valid or invalid, true or false. In making such implications, we reason from something that is known to something that is unknown. Claims of fact also focus on cause to effect relationship. So basically, when we say claim of fact, it is an argument about a quantifiable topic. So we can say that a claim of fact presents truthful details or information or arguments, meaning there's a basis. Okay, for example, a claim of fact may argue that climate change does not exist because these are simply natural cycles of weather change. In this case, you cannot easily check whether this is indeed a universally accepted and undisputable fact, as there are other evidences and arguments which disagree with it. So, when we say claim of fact, it's very important when you present an argument, it should be presented or supported with supporting evidence. So when you claim that something is true or valid, you should present evidence that can validate what you're claiming or your arguments. By that, you will be able to understand um, that the claims being presented in a text are true or not. Next is claim of value. Asserts qualitative judgments along a good to bad continuum relating to persons, events, and things in one's environment. If you construct a position claiming that something is good or bad, or one thing is better than another, you've made a claim of value. Examples of claims of value are The Wizard of Oz is the greatest movie of all time. Snowboarding is the greatest way to spend a vacation, or Indian food is the best food of all. Claim of value is different from claim of fact. Since claim of fact, you're going to quantify your information. Meaning, claim of fact is highly objective. But claim of value is subjective. You're going to provide your own judgments. Meaning, it's more of an opinion. As what the examples here presented, The Wizard of Oz is the greatest movie of all time. This specific sentence, when you analyze it, it's just the opinion of one person or of the author of this sentence. It's just his opinion that The Wizard of Oz is the greatest of all time. Although this is just an opinion, this is just a judgment, claim of value um, can be rationalized. You can still provide reasonable arguments as long as you're going to provide supporting arguments or um, supporting literature that can solidify your claims. Next is claim of policy. A claim of policy asserts that something should or should not be done by someone about something. It proposes that some specific course of action should, but not necessarily will be taken. The key word in a claim of policy is the conditional verb should, which implies that some action ought to be taken, but not that it must or will be taken. For instance, the United States should send a manned expedition to Mars, or students should read the assigned text material before the instructor lectures on it. When we say claim of policy, it is an argument which asserts the implementation of a certain policy that is driven by the need to present a solution to problems that have arisen. Sometimes it is given a response to claims of fact. So it generally states solutions and plans that are procedural and organized. A claim of policy also incorporates judgment coupled with supporting information. So a claim of policy, you're going to present or implement a policy or a rule. Policy claims are analyzed by locating the subclaims of fact, the need for a policy change in a status quo, or value claims, the desirability of making such a change inherent to the policy claim. So it's very important in claim of policy. It's not just you're going um, to give mandates about the policy that you should follow. But it's very important that you also have to rationalize or explain why why that particular policy should be implemented. The next, let's proceed to the logical fallacies. Okay, logical fallacies are errors in reasoning that invalidate an argument. As a critical reader, you have to identify and examine fallacies and manipulative language found in the text. Okay, when we say logical fallacies, these are also called as deceptive appeals because when you try to when you read or when you hear these claims or these fallacies, they seem like they are reasonable, they are logical. But the thing is, if we're going to analyze, they are irrational or without basis. First is we have false dilemma. False dilemma is also called as false dichotomy or either or fallacy. Occurs when an arguer presents his or her argument as one of only two options despite the presence of multiple possibilities. Example, either you fully devote yourself to the company or you quit. Okay, false dilemma is a type of informal fallacy in which something is falsely claimed to be an either or situation, when in fact there is at least one additional or more options. It occurs when an option or a choice is attempted to force, when a person gives an argument with only two options, when in fact there are or other alternatives, which means that in false dilemma, it's a black and white thinking. It's either black or it's either white. There are no gray areas. All good or all bad. Okay, another example. You're of us or you are against us. So being neutral is excluded. Meaning there's polarity in this type of a false fallacy, uh, logical fallacy. Next is appeal to ignorance. It occurs when something is instantly concluded to be true just because it is not proven false and vice versa. So example, the writer does not talk about the connection between the victim's killer and his sister. So there must be none. So appeal to ignorance is an informal fallacy. A proportion is true because it has not yet been proven false, or a proposition is true because it has not yet been proven false, or a proposition is false because it has not yet been proven true. This is the principle in appeal to ignorance. So it is a type of false dichotomy because it excludes a third option. There is no other sufficient investigation. Thus, you cannot necessarily prove something. So in appeal to ignorance, you are drawing a conclusion based on lack of knowledge or evidence without accounting for all the possibilities. Another example of this type of logical fallacy, no one can actually prove that God exists. Therefore, God does not exist. Meaning, you believe that something is false because it is not proven, and vice versa. Next is slippery slope. It occurs when a series of increasingly superficial and unacceptable consequences is drawn. For example, if we ban computer shops, then students will not be able to do research. And if they do not have tools for research, these students will fail their subjects. Okay. Slippery slope is an illogical supposed chain of events, meaning one event is believed to result on other events. Okay. Meaning in slippery slope, there is an exaggeration of consequences based on an event. Okay, one decision will lead to a superficial result because, for example, because President Duterte is the president of the Philippines, and he conducted a campaign against drugs or war on drugs, and he is from Davao City. Therefore, drug lords will take revenge against the Davaoenos. That's an example of a slippery slope. You believe that one action will automatically result to this type of consequence, even though there's no strong evidence or strong basis that one action, this specific action, can lead to this result. The next is complex question. It occurs when two or more points are rolled into one and the reader expected to either accept or reject both at the same time. When one point may be satisfactory while the other is not. Example, have you stopped cheating on exams? To say complex question, multiple points combined in just a single question. Okay, there is already a presupposition or presumed to be acceptable to the respondents when the question is asked. Meaning, example, this specific type of sentence, have you stopped cheating on exams? This type of question already assumed that you're already cheating. You are a cheater. Even though um, it is not yet proven or there's no there's no incident that um, you were caught in the act cheating during exams. But the thing is, this question already assumed that you are a cheater or you are already cheating because this person asks you, have you stopped cheating on exams? Next is appeal to force. It occurs when a threat instead of reasoning is used to argue. This kind of argument is also called as bully's argument, using face threatening act to assert an argument. It's like blackmailing, threatening. Example, if you do not admit that evolution is not real, we will isolate you from the group. So there's ostracization or rejection in this type of example. Next is appeal to pity or argumentum ad misericordiam. It occurs when the element of pity is used instead of logical reasoning. Okay, it is a fallacy in which someone tries to give an argument based on the emotions, meaning the person is exploiting the emotions of people in order um, to gain sympathy from other people. Instead of using logical reasoning, he used the emotions of the people. Example, please do not fire me for being absent all month. I have a sick mother and a special child to support. So even though um, the person has a valid reason, but the thing is he is employed in a company and he has obligations to the company. Although we have to in a real life situation, we have to empathize, we have to understand if our employees or our subordinates are having personal problems, but still we have to consider the liabilities, the compromises that can do they committed because of the situation. So instead of giving logical reasoning, the person use his situation in order to gain sympathy from other people. Next is appeal to consequences, or also called as argumentum ad consequentiam. It occurs when unpleasant consequences of believing something are pointed out to show that the belief is false. So this is a type of argument um, which appears to be either true or false based on whether the premise leads to desirable or undesirable desirable consequences. Example, you can't believe that colonialism is bad because if it were, then we would not be civilized. So, which means that an action is valid or invalid based on um, one result, believing that it is really a result of the premise being presented. Okay, for example, online games, online games are not bad. Rather, the students to be more engaging and analytical. It made the students more engaging or analytical because of the nature of the game, wherein uh, you need to make good techniques or strategies in order to defeat the enemies. So you cannot fully say um, an action is good just because of one good result or one good consequence. So you need to look at different perspectives. So this means that appeal to consequences um, do not look at the other side of the coins. Do not look the other angles. Do not look the other perspectives. It only focus in one consequence in order to validate or support his or her claim. Next is bandwagon or argumentum ad populum. It occurs when an argument is considered to be valid because it is what the majority thinks. Okay, bandwagon. It This type of argument presents that the proposition or argument is true because many people believe it, meaning majority of the people accepted it. Halimbawa, most Filipinos want to have, to have fair skin because they think they look beautiful. Therefore, having fair skin must be the real standard of beauty. So, this type of argument presents that um, just because many Filipinos um, have want to have fair skin, it doesn't mean that this is the standard of beauty. The next is attacking the person or argumentum ad hominem. It occurs when someone tries to refute an argument by attacking the character of a person instead of attacking the ideas of the argument. Say, attacking the person or ad hominem instead of attacking the motion or the argument or the topic being debated, you attack the personal life of your opponent or the opposing side. Example, I cannot accept your argument because, unlike me, you were not educated at Harvard University. You are dumb, you're idiot, you're stupid because you are DDS, because you are Dilawan. That's an example of ad hominem. Next is appeal to authority. It occurs when the argument quotes an expert who is not qualified in a particular subject matter, which means that a claim is treated to be true because you quote an expert who stated the claim. But the truth is that so-called expert is not actually an expert about the subject matter. Kalimbawa, Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft, recommends the effective fabric softening properties of Downy fabric softener. So it's unlikely that Bill Gates will be the face of a fabric softener because he is not an expert in this field. Although he is known as being the co-founder of Microsoft, it's a kind of technology. But the thing is, he is not an expert about soaps, about fabric softener. So it's very unlikely for him to um, advertise or promote such product. One of appeal to authority. This is usually used in advertisements, okay, employing celebrities to promote products. Next is anonymous authority. The authority in question is not mentioned or named. meaning an unknown expert is cited in order to support an argument or to have an argument. So, example, experts claim that eating peanuts causes pimples. Who are these experts? Who are these specific people? Remember, your ethos is very important when you persuade people to believe in your argument. So, since there are no experts presented in this claim, it's hard to believe. It's hard to rationalize. It's hard to treat this sentence as reasonable. Next is hasty generalization. It occurs when a sample is significant or enough to support a generalization about a population. It's a hasty generalization. This is also called as faulty or sweeping generalization, meaning um, you make generalization based on samples that do not represent the entirety of population. Meaning you just use um, number of samples or elements from that population, then you treated the whole population the same as the samples that you use. Example, Martha, the foreigner from France, is very impolite. French people are mean and rude. So just because you met Martha and she's French and she's impolite, doesn't mean that all French are mean and rude just like her. Then we have false analogy. It occurs when a writer assumes that two concepts that are similar in some ways are also similar in other ways. Meaning, you compare two things which do not have the same characteristics. Okay, example, drugs are like messages to make you feel good. So in this type of example, you cannot compare drugs with messages. The next one, accident. It occurs when a general rule is applied to a situation, even when it should be an exception. So in accident, you're very legalistic. You do not consider other situations or other possibilities that there are rules cannot be applied in all situations. Example, jaywalking is not allowed. So you should not have done that even when you were being chased by terrorists. So it's very unlikely that you still need to follow this specific policy, even though your life is being threatened. So there are exemptions granting the need and situation. Then we have post hoc. It occurs when the arguer claims that since event A happened before event B, A is the cause of B. So you claim that an event happened because you think there's an event prior to that event and you correlate these two events. Example, Dina saw a black cat when they went home. Along the way, they crashed into a tree. The black cat must be the reason why they met an accident. So just because there's a black cat before the accident, then you treated the black cat as the reason why the accident happened. So that's post hoc. We have Next we have wrong direction. Occurs when the direction between cause and effect is reversed, meaning the consequence is treated as the cause, not the result. Example, liver damage leads to alcoholism, when in fact, alcoholism leads to liver damage. So it's the opposite, it's reversed. It's the wrong direction. Next is complex cause. It occurs when the explanation for an event is reduced to one thing when there are other factors which also contributed to the event. When you say complex cause, an event happened because of ex, um, because of multiple events. In complex cause, um, an event happened because you believe that one event lead to that event. When in fact, there are many things that comprise which contributed why that event happened. Example, we were not able to solve the problem because of limited time, even if all the other groups were able to do so. So you cannot blame time, your limited time, for not being able to finish your project. But in fact, there are other things that you can do even though you have very limited time. So there's a possibility that even though you have very limited time, still you can you're very lenient, you're very relaxed, and uh you did not work with your task. That's the reason why you were not able to do it. Next is irrelevant conclusion. It occurs when an argument which is supposed to prove something concludes something else instead. Example, we must support the fight for gender equality between men and women. Women have suffered enough violence at home. Violence against women must stop. So, which means that your conclusion is different from your premise. So there's no proper established argument or connection between the propositions you provided in the argument. There are no connections between the premise and the conclusion. Next is straw man. It occurs when the position of the opposition is twisted so that it is easier to refute. Okay, example, we should relax the law governing that allowed smoking areas in the city. Fallacy, we should not do so because the number of smokers might increase. So in straw man, you're going to reduce the gravity of one argument so that it's easier for you to reject it or invalidate it. Next is affirming the consequence. Any argument of the form, if A is true, then B is true. If B is true, therefore A is true. Okay, example, if you're drinking wine, you have a problem. Therefore, if you have a problem, you are drinking wine. So there's no, in affirming the consequent, two situations are treated as similar. So, or connected, which means that you can say that this situation can lead to this situation because you believe that these situations are connected. True. Next is denying the antecedent. Any argument of the form, if A is true, then B is true. If A is not true, then B is not true. So, example, if you are drinking wine, you have a problem. Therefore, if you're not drinking wine, you do not have a problem. So, if you believe that something is true, something is connected, um, something is connected to other situation, then you believe that these situations are connected or they're similar. So um, if you believe that this situation is not true, then you treated that situation, other situation is not true. Example, you're drinking wine, you have a problem. You concluded that when you drink wine, you have a problem. So if you're not drinking wine, then you do not have a problem. So there's there's a problem with the in terms of forming the conclusion in this type of logical fallacy. The next is inconsistency. It occurs when arguments contradict one another. Okay. Frank is older than Jake. Jake is older than Nolly. And Nolly is older than Frank. So there's inconsistency with the statement. So an argument, you present an argument, and then your next presentation contradicts to your previous or prior argument. So that's inconsistency. And that's the end of my discussion. Thank you for listening.